The story this time is called The Heavenly Demon Wants a Peaceful Life, but let's be real, this damn protagonist has no intention of living peacefully. First off, the guy starts the story already engaged to a gorgeous fiancée, and still ends up at brothels during his first 30 nights, claiming he's trying to restore his body's vitality. His very first move, testing if he still has any power by launching an attack at a poor maid. If he wasn't so weak, he would have been dead on the spot. In just the first week, he's already wiped out the leaders of all the major groups in the region, just because they said he was only good for visiting massage parlors. And he's doing all of this while his body is still completely wrecked. See, in his past life, he reached the absolute peak of human power, but realized too late that the path he chose only led to death. Now in his second life, he's armed with more knowledge than anyone else, but stuck in the worst body possible. Even so, he's sworn that this time he'll go farther than any human ever has. This is the story of how someone who once stood at the top claws his way back to the throne, even when the odds are stacked against him. Under the moonlight, a bunch of troops advance toward the celestial demon who's flying in the sky. He asks if blood and fear is all that they want. The army attacks and he says, well, if that's what they want, then that's what they'll get. Everyone's bodies start exploding and the sky turns red. Blood rains down. He says they're way too weak, while the rest of the survivors hesitate to even draw their swords. He starts preparing another attack, but then the soldiers decide to strike back and all rush toward him. But the damn demon says that today they're going to learn the power of demonic arts. The whole ground starts shaking, and a giant hand rises. It goes after the army, who starts trying to flee, but they get crushed and dragged. Everyone who's dying wonders if something like this is even possible. How could so many people together not defeat a single person? And with that, the hand closed up in the sky, and once again, it rained blood. The demon smiled and asked where the next challengers were. But the battlefield, now covered in corpses, was silent, until suddenly, he felt something and clutched his chest. He started coughing up blood as a black mist approached him. This was the price for using the demonic art to this extent. He was paying the price for the absolute power he had after consuming countless souls. He believed that one day he'd overcome this curse that no one had ever broken, and apparently arrogance got the better of him. From the middle of the darkness, a bunch of purple eyes stared at him. When he looked down, some chains rose up from the ground and flew toward him. He seemed to be floating over a kind of void, and his legs, arms, and neck got bound. He asks if someone is trying to drag him to hell, and the guy let out a scream that shattered the curse right away, saying he won't be forced to do this. But suddenly, a light shines in front of him and his body starts to disintegrate. That's when he realizes the demonic art he used his entire life was truly inescapable. If he had a chance in another life, he'd follow a different path. He says he wants a peaceful, quiet life. But guys, like I already warned you, I read up to chapter 5. I can guarantee he doesn't want a peaceful life. Not at all. Somewhere with that classic Japanese-style scenery, the boy is standing in front of a lake. That's when the maid Susu shows up and tells him to eat before it gets cold. The boy raises his hand and slashes at her, like he wanted to slice her neck with power. That's byeok taesan, our reincarnated celestial demon. And obviously the girl's still alive because he has no power. The jerk was just testing. In other words, yeah, if he had any power, she'd already be dead. She's got that weird look on her face, saying that lately he's been acting strange. She sends him to his room right away while he just keeps staring at his own hand, confused. He can't believe he wasn't able to cut a neck, and that he reincarnated into such a trash body. And when he looks into the water, he says he hates that reflection of a face that looks like a girl's. A little later, during lunch, he was struggling just to hold the chopsticks, while repeating to himself that this body is worse than trash. Soso tells him to calm down and that soon he'll start getting better. She heard about an extremely skilled doctor who's coming this time, but he wants to know what some doctor, whose name he doesn't even know, could possibly do. She tells him to be a little more positive, that things will start working out soon. But it's true, man, it's already been 10 days since he reincarnated into this stinking body. He's the second son of the best merchant in the city, Wuhan. He gets up all bony, and as soon as he puts his hand to his face, a bunch of people come to help, checking his blood pressure, offering water, and dressing him. His body was such trash that he literally couldn't even eat on his own. Not to mention that the demon hated how his face was too pretty. What a terrible problem to have, huh? He finds it funny that someone who once stood at the top of the world is now struggling just to survive. For now, he's using every bit of energy he has just to keep breathing, and he knows the fastest way to recover would be by stealing people's soul energy. If he were still the demon he used to be, it would be as simple as killing and stealing. The problem is, he's way too weak for that now. He sits down thinking that he could die at any moment. But not even Wuhan wants that to happen, since he's been given a rare opportunity. That's because he had a realization about the demonic art right before dying. Now that he understands what the wrong path looks like, he can use that info to pursue something completely different. He then calls for Soso and says that today he's going out. She wants to know where he's planning to go and says she can take him wherever he wants. The rascal says he wants to visit the courtesan's house, commonly known as a massage parlor or brothel. Soso was about to say, good to know, but then her expression changes and she asks if she heard and right. He finds it odd and wants to know why she's so confused. She just replies that if that's the case, it'd be better if guard Suyeon went with him instead of her. Still, she says she's never seen him acting like this. He tells her that if that's the case, she can go with him. But obviously, she just refuses and he walks off. A while later, she's putting a cloak on him, thinking that for the past few days, he's been acting really strange. And now, just like that, he says he wants to visit a brothel. Taesan asks where the bodyguard is and she tells him not to worry, that he's someone who's always been training to protect the young master. Then she asks him not to be so hard on himself and he asks why. She says that lately she's felt like he's given up on everything. He should try to cheer up a little, especially since the doctor is already at the house. Our Taesan just thinks to himself that now that his power's been reduced to that of a normal person, he can finally start to understand how people really feel. He could tell she genuinely cared about him, which wasn't such a bad thing. Suddenly, he looks toward the gate and says the guy's arrived. Someone sneezes outside and she wants to know how he noticed, which makes him think, of course I'd noticed someone with an aura like that. The gate opens and Taesan stares the man down. Shin Kyung-won introduces himself, saying it's been a while since the young master summoned him. Our protagonist, staring at him, thinks this guy is like the embodiment of a blade. His energy is so refined, it's hard to believe he really works as a bodyguard. Maybe his father's merchant group isn't as normal as he thought. Sometime later, they're arriving at the grand battlefield Man, the House of Fragrant Roses. They get off a horse, and at the entrance, Kyung-won says he'll wait there. The protagonist wants to know why. They're outside, so why would he just stand around? Kyung-won tries to explain, but Taesan just wants to know if he's really confident he can protect him before anything happens. The poor guy didn't even get a chance to respond before Taesan was already walking ahead, telling him to hurry up and come have some fun. The guy replies that he can't do that. Taesan doesn't care, you can't have fun or you can't follow my orders. With just one stare, the guy started trembling, right? Then Taesan walks up and says it'd be great if he could both have fun and protect him. But at the very least, if he doesn't want to enjoy the place, he should at least stay close to him. Kyung-won man just bowed his head and said he understood, right? With that, the girls open the doors and he's greeted by all the workers. Look at his face, he came here to cause trouble. Some are playing little songs and a little while later, they're all sitting around the table chatting. Taesan asks where the bodyguard is and one of the girls says he's right outside keeping watch. Man, you can already tell he's one of those by the book types. Hard to change his mind. One of the girls comes over to serve some alcohol, but Taesan says his body isn't feeling too well, so today he'll let only them drink. Confused, the girls ask what he even came here for then. He says that first he wants to hear all the rumors going around about him. They're a bit confused, so he explains he wants to know what people say when they talk about the second son of the city's merchant leader. He's going to ask each of them and wants honest answers. A while later, he finds out that everyone believes he's going to inherit 1,000 gold coins, a small mansion, and a few courts and houses. But obviously, compared to his father's wealth, that's not much. Turns out the important share of the fortune is going to the other son, Taesu. He's Taesan. In other words, a slight difference. For him, just coming here was worth it because this is the kind of info he'd never get at home. No one would dare to say things like that around him. Suddenly, he gets up and says enough chit-chat. It's time to get started. Unfortunately, it'd be hard for him to deal with all of them at once, so today he'll choose just one. He gives a stare, man, and that one girl already knows she's been chosen. Next scene, he's in bed and she approaches. The girls outside are all gossiping, wondering if he'll come back another day and why he picked Ryan. She sits beside him and he asks how long she's been working at this house. She says 10 years. Man, she's experienced. No lack of talent there. He smiles back and says if that's the case, then they can begin. Meanwhile, the other girls are all going down the stairs, saying they'll ask their friend later what happened. One of the workers is just quietly observing all this chatter, when suddenly, a loud moan echoes through the whole place. The sounds serve as a whole show for our boy. The other guy's having fun, the guards, everybody in the house could hear the screaming. One of them even scratches his face and says, "Impressive sounds, huh?" One of the girls comments that apparently the soundproof barrier wasn't working. Inside the room, it was really loud, and the girl was gripping the bedsheets tight. But in reality, he was using a technique extracting something from the woman's head. Sometime later, he opens the room door and Kyung-won asks if he's alright. He smiles and says he's feeling better than ever. Then he starts walking down the stairs as the girls all stare from behind. A while later, they call out to Ryong and want to know what happened. She was 100% alive, and not only that, they all start saying she looked even more beautiful. Her skin and hair were more radiant. Her eyelashes seemed longer. They were all confused about what happened. Had the guy given her some kind of elixir or something? She says that's not quite it. She doesn't remember what happened. But her body feels incredibly light, like she's been reborn. What exactly did that rascal do to leave her feeling like that? Meanwhile, back at the house where he lives, Soso is doing laundry, wondering if the boy passed out in the courtesan's house. When suddenly, the gate opens. And when she sees it's our boy, 100% alive and well. She runs up asking if he really went to see a courtesan and came back all in one piece. He doesn't answer. just tells her to ask Kyungwon. The guy's standing there all awkward, like he doesn't really want to explain anything. But she already noticed. The boy seemed just fine. A while later, back in his room, there he was, concentrating the energy he absorbed from her. Even with all the power he took in, he only managed to restore a small part of his body. The truth is, what he took from her wasn't really life energy or anything like that. In his past life, every time he absorbed energy, he killed people, but that caused side effects. So instead of absorbing death-filled negative energy, now he was purifying the person's thoughts, soul, and body, and then absorbing that energy in a sort of purer state. That was the realization he apparently had at the end of his life, when he started disintegrating and finally understood why everything had gone wrong. That's exactly why he went to the courtesan's house, because those women for sure had been through a lot in life. So he already knew they'd have plenty inside to purify. But still, the biggest problem for him is this filthy body of his. Looks like he's going to have to visit that house a lot for a while. 10 days go by and the girls, man and woman alike, are all running through the halls in a frenzy, saying they can't believe how often he's been coming there, especially with that weak little body of his. All of them are eager to get a chance with the guy, since after the purification, they do get a visual upgrade. Not to mention, he's the son of a rich family, so well, if he happened to fall for one of them, that'd be her golden ticket to a new life. Walking through the halls, all of them are staring, trying to seduce the rascal. While he's throwing compliments around, another girl's feeling left out. The owner of the house is pissed that this bastard's been showing up every single day. A mysterious voice asks if they should try strengthening the soundproofing, to which she replies that she's already tried all kinds, but it's useless. Every time that bastard comes in, it's nothing but screaming in that room. Even the other customers are starting to complain. But then she asks if the shadow ghost doesn't find it strange that someone who is practically on their deathbed is suddenly acting like this. And why is he coming specifically to this courtesan house when his family owns some of their own? The shadow asks if they should try finding out what these guys are plotting. She replies that for now it's better not to. After all, they're the most powerful merchant group in the city. First, she needs to figure out exactly what is going on inside those rooms. Meanwhile, our boy's walking down the hallway, still being chased by all of them. Just seeing the guy makes all the girls smile with those dumb love-struck faces. But as he looks around, he tells himself that today he's in the mood for more of a challenge, and wonders where she is. He turns to one of the attendants and says, "Bring out all the working girls," which leaves the man confused. He replies that the most beautiful and popular ones are already right there. The ones who aren't present are the ones who don't draw much attention. But the rascal already spotted one in the back. He walks through the crowd, saying he decides who draws attention. The girls look like they're fuming as they see he's heading toward the ugliest of them all. He asks for the name of the girl, all surrounded by this dark aura, and she replies, Danyang. He says it's nice to meet her, and that today he's going to need her services. The other girls are all whispering that this guy sure has a unique taste. He keeps walking through the hallways while noticing that she had an extremely depressive energy. Most likely, she was full of things to purify, exactly the kind of person he needed. Now that he was recovering part of his body's health, it was time for a slightly harder challenge. He bursts open the door, but pauses for a moment. Then he smiles and says, "Just look at these bastards." He calls for Kyungwon and asks for his sword. As soon as it's handed to him, he throws it up and the blade stops, hitting the ceiling over the bed. Blood drips from the blade, and right then they realize there was an assassin in the room. The protagonist just comments that the guy is still alive, which makes him mad at himself, right? Man, he caught the guy off guard and still couldn't finish him. But seeing the blood dripping in the room, Danyang wasn't too thrilled about the situation. Our guy just tells Kyungwon to handle it because he had some business to take care of with the girl. He calls out to Danyang and tells her to get ready, because today he was going to suck the soul out of her body. "Oh, you silly dog, you only say that because you mean it literally, huh? If it were any other sense, I doubt you'd be talking all tough like that." Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Yun. A girl standing up says she heard that the second master of the house has been visiting courtesans every night. The girl sitting down tells her what people have been calling him lately. That's the mansion's guard, Yu Soyeon, and she says he's now being called the king of the house of fragrant roses, or even the man of unmatched potency. The girl standing slams her hand on the table and demands to be taken there right now. She has to meet him. Her name is Yeon Harem, and she's the fiancée of our boy. So yeah, this dude's been visiting the ladies for 10 days straight with a fiancé. Yeah, he's a real madman. And Harem says she's going right now to find him. Meanwhile, someone's arriving to tell our protagonist that he needs to return home. But the main thing he wants to know is what Kyungwon did with the assassin. Kyungwon, a bit startled, says he left the guy in prison. Taesan nods, says he did a good job and that it's time to go back. But the servant is still wondering if this is even the same master he once knew. Not only has his energy changed, but now he suddenly has enough skill to kill an assassin like that. It's almost like he's become a completely different person. Sometime later, he's arriving back home. A bit more upbeat, finally his body was starting to recover. Of course, he's still far from where he once was, but he's also no longer someone you call trash. Feeling proud over such a small victory made him realize how much he's changed. But then he suddenly stops and wonders, who are these two in front of me, and why is the one on the left staring at me like that? One of them steps forward and asks if it's true he's been spending every night at the Corson house. The protagonist, however, has no idea who this crazy girl is. Harem asks if he's dissatisfied with their engagement, if this is some plan to push her away. Only then does taesan realize dude's engaged. She says that even if he's doing this on purpose, she's never going to give up on him, getting all clingy already. And she just asks that he doesn't give up on her either. Our boy obviously is confused. He has no idea who this crazy girl is, so what is she even saying? But honestly, and in his own way, he answers that he didn't do this with those intentions. And the moment he says he won't give up on her, a little smile pops up on her face. She's all emotional now, saying her feelings are finally being understood. But before he can say anything else, she's already walking off, saying she's leaving. And while she's right there clinging to him, he's thinking to himself, this girl actually got me stuck for a second. So far, she's the most powerful enemy he's ever met. And then he notices that his servant was already walking up ahead and sticking real close. Oh, guys, what's going on here? A while later, Soso is giving our boy a bath fully clothed, asking if he ran into Miss Yan on his way back. He wants to know how she already knows that, and she says she's got eyes and ears all over this place. But he's already sure. She must have been the one who ratted him out to those two, right, telling them he's been visiting the lady's house every single day. Suddenly, Soso asks if Kyungwon's doing alright, which leaves our boy confused. Why wouldn't he be okay? Then she explains his warrior has a crush on his wife's warrior. Man, that's too easy, huh? Our protagonist has a servant, he already has a wife, and now this servant likes his wife's servant. What the heck? It's all perfectly balanced. 1 + 1 is 2, or in this case, 2 + 2 is 4. And now it all makes sense. Why, as soon as he passed by his wife, Kyungwon was already up ahead walking fast. Honestly, it's just weird seeing relationships where there's respect without fear, man. Because in the life he lived before, that separation didn't exist. If you wanted respect, people had to be afraid of you. But he's not hating this, which makes him wonder if his soul is being influenced by the body he's in now. Sometime later inside the prison, Kyungwon says he disabled the guy's movements using pressure points. Taesan just thanks him and tells him to open the cell. When he walks in, he observes the guy and smiles. His body was full of dark energy, which was obvious for an assassin. And for our boy, who loves some evil energy, this was basically a feast. He tells Kyungwon to stay outside, but the guy seems to hesitate. He says it's too dangerous and asks what Taesan's planning to do when they're alone. But Taesan, cool as ever, just asks how he's going to help anyway. I mean, he didn't even notice that the assassin was on the bed that night. Kyungwon gets a little embarrassed and tries to explain himself. But man, Taesan just says, I'm not repeating myself. That's when the boy goes cold and says, understood. He closes the cell and waits outside. Once again, he couldn't believe that the young master he always knew was now giving off pressure like that. For a second, it felt like he was standing face to face with a martial arts master. Suddenly, screaming breaks out from inside the cell and Kyungwon draws his sword. But he quickly realizes it's not the young master's voice, it's the criminal screaming. What he really wants to know is what the heck is going on in there. Obviously, Taesan was extracting the man's soul energy. And seeing just how corruptive that energy was, he realized this guy was way more dangerous than he expected. Suddenly, though, he realizes the soul was too corrupted for him. He has to cancel the transfer and wonders if it was just too much for him to handle. To purify properly, obviously, the process has to go until only clean energy is left. But in this guy's case, the soul was so tainted that it would have ended up affecting Taesan's own soul, so he had to back off. Looks like this guy is way too dangerous to handle right now. So for now, he'll have to stick to resolving things through the courtsons. Meanwhile, at the House of Fragrant Roses, the madam is biting her nails, trying to figure out what's going on. It had been 2 days since her shadow assassin was captured by Taesan, but so far, the guy hadn't shown up again. The servant is there, not really sure what to say, when suddenly someone bursts in and calls for the madam, saying she needs to come right now. That's when the shadow ghost enters, but the guy says something's off about him. The madam asks why he's all twisted up and trembling like that. She immediately orders them to strike the pressure points to release him, whatever's wrong with him. The guy obeys and hits a point on the back of the neck. But then, the man's body starts to fall apart. Before either of them can understand what's happening, he collapses like a puddle of jelly, only his skeleton left behind. Right then and there, she's sure this is the work of the merchant group, the one tied to Taesan's family. She asks, where is Danyang? The guy responds that they were planning to send Danyang to the master of the Crimson Dragon clan. But the madam says they won't be doing that anymore. Instead, they're going to send Danyang to Master Taesan, not that other guy. The servant hesitates, saying that's insane. Obviously, the Dragon Master will come after them once he finds out. A vicious man like that, if he hears about this, would start destroying everything in sight. Even so, the madam simply says to obey and cancel her scheduled visit. The House of Fragrant Roses would be sending a new gift to young Taesan. Some time passes, and a strange rumor starts spreading in the brothel. The girls say that if you spend a night with him, you wake up more beautiful than ever, almost like you've been reborn. On top of that, it seems like you become addicted and just want to be near the boy. Some of them were even calling him a divine being who crossed time itself, and those rumors were spreading like wildfire. The madam always thought it was just an exaggerated rumor going around among the hardworking girls. But now here was Dane Yang right in front of her, saying she wanted to serve the boy. The madam laughs, wanting to know why out of nowhere she wants to drop everything and go be with taesan. Looks like she fell in love with him, but that would only be possible if he paid off all her debts. Dan Yang says he didn't mention anything like that it's just her intention. Suddenly, the madam's expression changes. She says she has no idea what kind of conversation the two of them had. But Dan Yang is nothing more than property of this house and will stay here until every last debt is paid. She's to obey and prepare to meet the Crimson Clan's master. Now I got a little confused. She went through all that, but in the next scene, there's Dan Yang standing outside Taesan's house. Looks like this was before that talk. She must have made her decision after that and changed the madam's mind. So now Dan Yang is there because obviously she was sent by the madam after she changed the plan. Her problem though is that she's feeling all insecure, not sure if the boy is going to accept her. What if he thinks she's too dirty? Even with all that risk, she wanted to see him again. Girl, this boy's been going to the brothel for 30 days straight. If there's one thing he doesn't care about, it's that. There he's in his room as usual, training his body to get stronger, when someone appears on the other side and says to the young master that he has a visitor. Of course, it's Dan Yang and he's a bit confused why she's there. But right away, she places her hand over her chest and bows deeply to Master Taesan. She says she wants to serve him for the rest of her life and apologizes for showing up so suddenly. All she wants is to stay by his side. Only now does our boy realize when he purifies someone's soul, their appearance actually improves. And the first thing he says is to ask Soso where she sleeps. She tells him there's a servant house nearby. He tells her to find another place and that she and Dan Yang should start living closer to him. Poor Soso is stunned. He didn't even say he accepted the girl, he's already giving orders. Before she can even react, he's already walking off, telling her to take care of the girl. But his servant girl starts thinking that girl is way too pretty for work like this. And once again, she wonders why her young master has changed so much lately. After spending the night with every girl in the House of Fragrant Roses, now he's visiting the House of Fallen Flowers, and since he's looking for the most broken, messed up girls full of baggage. The name alone was already a promising sign for him. He was eager for the kind of corrupted energy he could absorb from that place. But as he's approaching, someone suddenly tells him to stop and look over there. Kanwon shoots a glare to the side, and the leader of the Crimson Dragons introduces himself, wanting to know if he's the one who stole the Dan Yang. The merchants nearby all seem to know. Whenever this guy shows up, there's going to be trouble. Our boy turns to Kyungwon and asks, "Who's this idiot?" That's when he explains, yeah, that's the master of the Crimson Dragon sect, an unorthodox group that had settled nearby. Taesan just replies that unorthodox group is just a fancy way of saying they're a bunch of thugs. How could such lowly people have the audacity to be given such a grand name? He literally says to ignore those idiots and just walks off like he doesn't care. Obviously, that doesn't sit well with the guys. They ask if he's really going to ignore them like that. And then they tell the little gigolo to stop right there. Now that Taesan didn't like. But to be fair, it was kind of an accurate nickname, wasn't it? I've seen people roasted way harder for way less. Still, the celestial demon mutters to himself how much he already hates this pretty face of his with every ounce of his soul. And now this damn weirdo has the nerve to call him a gigolo. The guy starts laughing, mouth wide open, saying the little boy seems scared now. But man, Taesan is a man of few words. He takes one step forward and says, "I'll leave the rest of those who serve me." Kyungwon immediately understands and draws his sword. Obviously, the other guy's underlings react too. That's when the Crimson guy says it's ridiculous to hire bodyguards just to act tough. Today, he teach them what real courage looks like. And if the kid wanted to get out alive, he just had to hand over Danyang. But Taesan replies, "That's never going to happen. And you talk too much. What'd you fight with your mouth to?" And bam, in the next second, the guy lunges forward saying that today the kid's going straight to hell. Kyungwon had already taken down his two opponents, and when he sees the guy charging, he shouts for Taesan to get out of the way. But our boy, cool as ever, demon mode activated, just makes a tiny movement with his hand and lands one clean hit right on the guy's chin. Unfortunately, something seems to go wrong with Taesan's wrist. Even a simple attack like that was still too much for his body to handle. But the Crimson little boss goes down, crashing to the ground like a sack of trash. Kyungwon is concerned, but Taesan just wants to know, are the other two dead yet? A bit embarrassed, the servant says no, they're just knocked out. Taesan says, "You really are too weak," then tells him to finish them off and follow him. He pauses for a second and adds, "If anyone asks who killed that guy, lie. Don't say it was me." Poor Kyungwon stands there frozen, just nodding and saying, "All right, understood." But he's confused. How the heck did Taesan kill the leader of the Crimson Dragons just like that, with no weapon? Now it was clear, what he did to that assassin wasn't just some coincidence. The problem is, it's obvious now that he's not the same person as before. The next morning, our cheeky boy wakes up, right next to Danyang. Man, I'm starting to think this soul extraction thing is just a front. The kid's clearly enjoying himself. I didn't see him extract any corruption out of her. What it looked like was that he did something a little more corrupt instead. Right now, he's mad at himself for almost breaking his wrist just to take out that useless guy yesterday. He knows he still has a long way to go, but no way is he going to accept being called a gigolo. Suddenly, though, he wants to know why Heron's bodyguard is there. Suein looks at him and says, "So you finally showed up." As usual, our boy skips the small talk and wants to know why she's here. He's sure it's not for tea. But before answering, Suein asks if that Corson who served him was one of the girls from the house he's been visiting daily. Short and blunt, he simply asks, "What's the problem?" She notices his cloak's half open and asks if he just came back from the brothel. Completely honest and unfazed, he replies, "Yeah." The poor girl seems to lose hope right then and there. She then says, "Your engagement is going to have to be cancelled." Obviously, our boy isn't really caring about any of this much. But she explains that it looks like someone sent a marriage proposal for Heron. It came directly from the Zhongli clan and the Murim alliance. And Zhongli, isn't that the guy from Genshin Impact? What's he doing here? Trying to steal our boy's wife? Because of that, Heron is kind of being forced to cancel the engagement. But she's completely against the idea. The problem is that rumors are spreading. Taesan understands that it's hard for her to refuse when everyone knows he's been out there in the brothels with all the girls, one per night or more. So he asks if she came here to warn him to be careful with this Zhongli guy. After all, these guys might try something against him. Suein explains that yes, Heron asked her to protect him. When she starts to explain about those people, he just calls them a bunch of filthy bastards. Apparently they're important because she tells him not to say stuff like that so openly. But man, this Zhongli clan seems to be the same one that abandoned him back when he was the celestial demon. So yeah, those bastards have been messing up the world for a long time. Suein stands up, saying it's interesting that she came to defend him. But he's more than curious to see what those guys are actually capable of. Sometime later, under the moonlight, 3 people are walking through the forest. Our boy has a little excited smile. That's because his body has been evolving more and more. But on the other side, Suein is always glaring at him, full of anger. He turns to her and says that if she doesn't want to follow him, she doesn't have to. But she lowers her head and says it's not like that. This is the least she can do for him. The protagonist says, "Fine then," while thinking to himself that anyone looking at this situation would probably think he wants her around or something. Then suddenly he stops. Kyungwon asks what's wrong, and he just asks how many of them are out there. The servant's a little confused, but when he looks up and behind, he sees a bunch of assassins up in the trees. Taesan spots 3, then says no. Actually, there's another one hidden, so that makes 4. The guys drop down from the trees. One of them says that it's not worth hiding anymore since they've been discovered. The one in the back with white hair says it's best for the 3 of them not to resist and just come with them. Taesan, though, is pissed that these damn thugs are once again acting like they're respectable people. Yeah, as always, he completely ignores whatever the guy says and just talks to his servant, telling him to try judging the strength difference between him and the white-haired guy. Kyungwon takes a look. He can see some energy being emitted and a faint smell of blood. Just from those details, it was clear this wasn't an ordinary assassin. He tells our boy that the guy is strong, but he believes he could defeat him pretty easily. That's because he's about 3 levels above him. Clearly, humility is not this dude's strong point, man. Everyone who shows up gets roasted and ignored. Taesan then asks why he's still standing there. It's time to check if his assessment was correct. "Man, I like Kyungwon," he just observes. Takes 1 step forward and walks right between the bandits who don't even react. Walks past, all stylish, leaving his aura behind. The leader, hand on his hip, didn't look very impressed. He starts drawing his katana, saying the guy really does have impressive energy. But it's not gonna be that easy. In the blink of an eye, Kyungwon almost takes a slash to the face, man. And the problem is, after dodging the first strike, the guy is already going for another from above. Kyungwon manages to draw his katana just in time and block the hit. That's when the real back and forth starts, you know? Strike to the head, the guy defends left and right, back and forth. The enemy activates a red aura but is clearly surprised. Kyungwon is way more skilled than he expected. He grips his sword tightly, thinking this definitely isn't just some random merchant's bodyguard. He jumps in to strike Kyungwon, but Suein tells him to be careful and says they should help him. But Taesan is calm, saying this will all be over with a single strike. Before she can even ask why, bam, there it is. Kyungwon obviously had already finished the fool. Suein, however, is stunned. How did Kyungwon defeat someone that advanced so easily? And from behind her, Taesan says that once again, Kyungwon has disappointed him. He only cut off an arm, he really had too soft a heart. The girl, obviously, looks to the side, thinking this guy's out of his mind. Still, she wants to know why Kyungwon suddenly seems to be getting stronger like that. He tells her to stop just standing there and go take care of the rest. He had some questions to ask, so they weren't supposed to kill him too brutally. Their meridians and body points are all copied, and they collapse to the ground, all twisted up. The problem is, one of them had disappeared. Suddenly, someone yells for Taesan to dodge. When she looks to the side, there's a blade nearly slicing Taesan's neck. But before she can do anything, Hyunwon jumps in and smashes the guy's head into the ground. Taesan, though, doesn't look too happy about it. That's because, in order to save him, Hyunwon let that other one-armed assassin escape. Seriously, this damn servant is way too soft. Hyunwon apologizes, of course, for having let the assassin escape from right in front of them. Taesan thinks that if he were still the celestial demon, a mistake like that would never be forgiven. But for some reason, this time he wasn't even that mad. He just responds, "Whatever, that guy was weak as hell anyway," and tells him to gather the 3 captives. A short while later, they're all lined up and Taesan wants to know what to do with the amazing trio. He says that killing them is a pretty solid option and asks if anyone's against it. Obviously, the only ones against it are the 3 on the ground, begging for mercy. But Taesan just replies that since no one's sharing any info, he's gonna start torturing them. Which of course makes them start talking. They say they were sent by the Crimson Dragon sect, that it was an order from the vice leader and anyone who refused would get beaten up too, so they had no choice. Taesan thanks them and tells them to keep spilling info. Then he orders the 3 idiots to be brought along as they head toward the brothel. Sueyeon, however, is confused. What's going on? Was he really planning to make his usual nighttime visit after all that? But here we are again, man, at the House of Fallen Flowers. And the moaning is always echoing through all the halls. Outside the door are the 2 servants, red in the face and a bit confused. Hyunwon, poor guy. This is worse than torture. He can't even look to the side while all of this is going on. She asks if this is really okay, if he's sure he doesn't need to go in and check what's going on. He says it's normal, and that he just has to endure until morning. Sueyeon starts to think something's off, and that's when she realizes, yeah, this poor guy probably has to go through this every single night. Even the 3 captured fools are there on the floor, listening to everything. Sometime later, the sun starts to rise, and our boy comes out of the room. For some reason, the 3 little bandits now have these sweet, innocent looks on their faces, kinda like NPCs acting shy. Hyunwon says that strangely they ended up giving all the information. Looks like their plan really was to bring Taesan to the Crimson Dragon sect to handle some kind of issue. And not even the 3 of them know the identity of the guy who ran off. That's because he only does special assignments for the boss. Taesan is sure they're not lying. That guy wasn't just some random thug. He was just unlucky that Hyunwon isn't just some random bodyguard. Because, let's be honest, 99% of people would have died fighting him. The only thing he finds strange is that so far, it seems like the Zhongli clan isn't involved in any of this. Then he says they're going back home, and to bring the 3 with them. Sometime later back home, he's opening a gate, placing the 3 guys inside, and saying he's going to apply some restrictions. Then he turns to Hyunwon and Sueyeon and tells them they better pay close attention. He was going to teach some martial arts, so they'd better learn quickly. The 2 of them are a bit confused, since they didn't even know Taesan was capable of teaching anything. But he simply tells them to learn this simple restriction technique. The secret was in how you connect energy and make it flow through the other person's body. He touches the guy's neck and warns them to be careful, because if you don't do it right, the person could die. Then he tells the guy to pay attention, because if he disobeys, he'll lose his vision. The poor guy was about to say something, but too late, man. He's already on the ground, all twisted up. No idea what's happening. Our protagonist tells them to take advantage. There's a bunch of people there to test on however much they want without worry. Hyunwon starts practicing, all while wondering where Taesan learned this stuff. Sueyeon, on the other hand, is standing back, confused by the behavior of the 2. That's when the protagonist suddenly changes expression and says he's going to teach how to make a guy's testicles explode. This is supposed to be the celestial demon who wants a peaceful life, right? And just a few seconds later, the 2 poor guys are already hunched over, suffering hard. Man, did they really blow up those guys' sacks? That's just evil. Would have been easier to just kill them in the forest. While all this is happening, we get a look at the Oziel Pavilion. A man approaches a table where a bearded guy is sitting. He seems to be reading something and asks if the House of Fragrant Roses, the first place our boy visited, recognized anything. That guy is the uncle of our protagonist, master of the Oziel Pavilion, and his name is Byeok Wohang. The one talking to him is Byeok Sangil, his son, who says that soon enough they'll expose a weakness. The father closes the scroll and says it doesn't matter if they recognize something or not. They just need to take advantage of this incident and squeeze as much profit from it as possible. That cursed perfumed house was actually an intelligence organization disguised as a Corson house. And obviously, they needed to use this to bring that place into the Golden Wall Merchant Group, which is the merchant group involving our boy's whole family. The father asks if the son has anything else to report, and he explains that the Crimson Dragon sect seems to be splitting up ever since that guy's death. One of the factions is known as the Golden Celestial Alliance, and they better keep an eye on them because they're extremely dangerous. That was an alliance formed by some merchants from the city of Han. On the surface, they seem united and coexisting peacefully. But in reality, this alliance is against their group. And now the father's wondering what those bastards are scheming this time. The son replies that he'll keep an eye out, and if he notices anything suspicious, He'll report it immediately. After a moment of silence, the old man decides to ask, "What's this I'm hearing about Taesan being called the King of the Nights?" He wants to know if the boy is using some kind of special medicine, or what exactly he's taking to be so full of energy. The son replies that he hasn't heard of any medicine. He thinks the kid's just in poor health from spending too much of it on the girls at the brothel. The way he's pouring all that energy into that place, considering his current health condition, is dangerous. He's only shortening his own lifespan. The uncle says he understands. It's all fine. But the truth is, man, he's dying of envy of that bastard. Sometime later, back at our boy's mansion, Soso is asking what happened with those bandits, now all obedient and downcast. He says they're not bandits. They're honest workers he brought to help her since she needed it. She replies that they clearly look a little suspicious. Taesan just thinks to himself that if she didn't want help, then she shouldn't have asked for it in the first place. But the truth is, man, Soso is starting to think our boy is actually a kind person. He brought in these poor guys who clearly look like they're dying to start working. Taesan then says that now they're going to get new names. From left to right, they would be Black 1, Black 2, and Black 3. The guys obviously are confused, but with just one stare, they smack their foreheads on the floor and thank him, saying it's amazing to be Black 1, Black 2, and Black 3. He turns to Soso and tells her it's decided now. That's their names and she can use them however she wants. Then he asks where Kyungwon is because he hasn't seen him for a while. She scratches her chin and says that around this time of day he's usually training. Our boy looks up the sky, saying that guy lives an absurdly honest life for someone who's just a merchant's guard. I'm not sure if that was praise or just a roast for guy. And there he is again, man, Hyungwon, practicing his sword movements, thinking to himself that it's unbelievable how Taesan took that guy out with just one hit to the chin. He's never seen a technique like that, so how did he do something like that? Hyungwon has never regretted being part of the Sword of the Dragon organization. His job there with the merchants was simple. Whenever a crisis happened, it was his job to help. As long as he keeps that in check, he gets paid really well. But it's also true that the longer it takes him to get stronger, the more anxious he becomes. Lately, though, something has changed. Watching Taesan from a distance, he knows that that's the person who can help him reach a new level. Suddenly, someone interrupts his thoughts, asking how long he plans to keep training. When he looks back, there's our boy already saying that it's time for their daily visit to the Courtson house as usual. The servant, though, says he has something to ask, and Taesan turns, wanting to know what it is. Kyungwon just wants to know if he's no longer going to hide it. Taesan, confused, asks what he's talking about. And the guy says he started to notice ever since he dealt with that assassin on the bed, then how he killed the leader of the Crimson Guys, and now with these restriction techniques. After all that, he's absolutely sure. The protagonist wonders if this guy really already knows who he is. He thought this idiot was just another strong, dumb type, but apparently he let his guard down too much. He couldn't let anyone find out that he's the celestial demon, especially because he wants to live a peaceful life. Yeah, peaceful. We're really seeing that peace in action. Huh. His life is so peaceful, he's actually questioning whether he should kill this guy right now in case he's figured everything out. But then suddenly, Kyungwon drops to his knees and asks for help. The protagonist is a little confused, but the guy says he already knows he's a genius, and now he wants him to accept him as a disciple. Taesan gets it now. The guy thinks he's some kind of martial arts master who's been hiding his skills. And then Kyungwon says he also wants to get stronger, and that he seeks revenge, because someone had destroyed his sect. But our philosopher Taesan tells him not to let revenge be the motivator for his actions. Countless people have lost their sects. He's just one of many, and shouldn't think he's special because of that. Yikes. Poor guy. Went to share his trauma and got absolutely shut down. Our boy turns away, saying that people who use emotional things like that as motivation don't last long. That's because once those feelings fade, those people start to disappear too. That's why he'd only accept someone who had the pure desire to become stronger, nothing else. Kyungwon stands there all awkward, listening to everything. And our boy says that people who walk that path can take their revenge whenever they want. The poor guy just brings his hands together, bows his head, and says he understands. Sometime later, on the bridge, on the way to visit the ladies once again, my dudes. Soyeon's always is following along, right? Not really liking all this fun. Walking ahead, our boy tells Kyungwon to stop being an idiot and start talking to her already. The fool tries to pretend he doesn't know what he's talking about. But our boy just tells him to quit acting dumb. He knows exactly what he means. Meanwhile, Soyeon is wondering if he really does this every day. What did her young lady even see in a person like this? But suddenly, Taesan stops and says the air has a strange scent of blood. No one else smells anything right, and our boy says they're all idiots, only smelling with their noses. Sorry, 6th sense. I haven't unlocked Smell 2.0 yet. Taesan immediately senses that it's the same aura as the guy who got his arm cut off. And from the presences he's picking up, it's clearly more than one person. He turns and tells the two of them to go kill someone. And even before he finishes the sentence, Kyungwon is already gone. Soyeon, on the other hand, still hasn't sensed anything and doesn't know what to do. But suddenly, she notices something approaching and grabs a small blade. Actually, no. It was our boy who grabbed the blade, and he tells her to stop standing there like an idiot or she'll die. Poor thing still has no idea where the attack is coming from. He sort of points in a direction and tells her to go over there, saying she better give it her all. Right then, one of them charges in, and that white-haired guy shows up again, swinging his sword. But the guy's missing an arm, so even Suyeon could defend herself easily. The guy realizes she's weaker than Kyungwon. She grits her teeth and rushes forward, telling him not to move from there. But turns out she stepped into a trap he had set, and everything starts exploding under her feet. Actually, it was probably a trap meant to freeze her in place, because the guy took that chance to charge straight toward our boy. She realizes that from the beginning, he was trying to create an opening to kill the young master. And the way things were going, it looked like he was going to be killed. It even seemed like the guy had managed to stab his blade right into Taesan's chest. But Taesan smiles and says, "It's moments like this where you can tell who's inexperienced." The guy's expression changes when he sees that our boy caught the sword under his armpit man. And before he can even understand what's happening, he gets hit in the neck and goes down coughing up blood. Suyeon still hasn't even managed to move and is in disbelief that he defeated that guy with one hit. Once again, he tells her to stop standing still and actually be part of the fight. Poor thing's there, apologizing, saying she'll do her best. He then tells her not to forget to bring that loser's body. They were going to put it to use. Kneeling down to pick up the body, she can't believe Taesan actually beat that guy. The guy she would have struggled with without even getting a chance to move. Now she's looking at him with different eyes, huh? You can tell because now she's already saying she found someone who's going to change her life. Apparently, the fact that he sees a different girl every night in a motel doesn't seem to be a problem anymore. She's desperate to stay by his side and figure out what kind of technique he used. Walking under the moonlight, she gets hit with another scolding. He tells her that based on her performance today, she's way too weak to think about protecting him. From today on, she'd be training the Kyungwon. She's kind of hesitating, but in a way, it would be like learning from our boy, since he wanted her to get stronger, and maybe she could even become a disciple in the future. But suddenly, she changes her expression and asks, "Where's Kyungwon?" He tells her not to worry, he can take care of himself. But if she wants, she can go find him. Obviously, he had defeated the other thug with ease. Or, actually, it wasn't that easy. He's sitting there all out of breath, saying that bastard was tougher than he expected. Still, even so, he did manage to defeat the guy with a certain ease. He stops for a second with a dumb look on his face, like he's trying to scan the surroundings, but he doesn't sense any humans. In other words, where are the two he came with? The next day at the Ozil Pavilion, once again with the uncle of the father, or whoever that crazy guy is, they're talking about how Taesan is going to the Courtson house to bring some corpses, which kind of goes against the old man's plans because he wanted to absorb those guys himself without making things more complicated. But with Taesan doing that, he doesn't have much choice. And the one passing along the info also says that the Crimson Dragon's sex master said he has no choice now but to hunt down Master Taesan. The uncle says that unfortunately, they can't let this incident slide. Something has to be done. There were too many eyes on that one person, and at this rate, it would start to affect the reputation of the Golden Wall Merchant Group. He walks over to the window and says it seems like Taesan is recovering his health. The son replies that it's hard to believe. It seems like every night he spends all of his vitality, but somehow stays 100%. Could he be using some kind of elixir? The uncle just says, maybe one day we'll discover that legendary secret. Back home, the meal had been set on the table, and look there. Black 1, Black 2, and Black 3 were with them. Man, the guys are being treated well. The protagonist asks why they're not eating, and they seem a bit hesitant. It's kind of rude to eat at the same table as the master. But he just says they're part of his group now, so they should start eating right away. From now on, they'll all eat together at every meal. Black 1, 2, and 3 immediately respond that this really is a great idea. That's when Soso says that the guy known as the Divine Doctor would be arriving today. There were rumors that he could fix any body, even one completely drained of vitality. But our boy replies that he'll keep recovering just fine as long as he can keep going to the Courtson's house every night. Everyone's a bit awkward. Kinda stunned, he says that so openly in front of everyone. And weirdly, Soso kind of gets it. She says it's not possible that he's recovering by doing that. It's not like he's stealing energy from them. But he replies that you could say what he's doing is something pretty similar. She wants an explanation, but he just says to let him know as soon as the doctor arrives. She says it seems like he took some accommodations elsewhere in the city, and from what she heard, he wants to check out the area he's passing through before coming over. At the top of the mountain, a man in a hat looks down at the city. He says that the name Golden Wall Merchants is pretty grand. Another handsome bastard just showed up, and whenever a story already has a bad boy protagonist and a pretty guy appears, there are only two options. Either he's gonna die, become a villain, and get wrecked, or he's gonna be the dumb friend who gets humiliated all the time. It's always like this. Who wants to place bets with me? Back to the lunch that was happening before. Our protagonist is eating peacefully, and then mentions he heard people saying Black One had been helping out quite a bit lately. The poor guy gives a shy smile and says he didn't do anything special. He was just watching over the warehouse and giving a hand. He then adds that Black 2 and Black 3 are the most hardworking ones of all, And he's also noticed that lately the master is getting more and more handsome. He says he's not lying, he's not just trying to flatter him. He's noticing that the master looks taller, stronger, and his skin is smoother each day. Even though he's a man, he's starting to feel more and more in love. Our boy tells him to shut up and stop saying disgusting stuff. But Black 1 keeps praising him, saying it really is amazing how much the young master is growing. Black 2 and 3, on the other hand, are thinking this nutcase should really just shut up. But the protagonist knows that, in a way, the guy's noticing something that's actually true. He's not as pale as before, and he's been regaining his muscle, right? Because he just keeps absorbing the courtesans. But whatever the result of all this is, the only thing he knows is he can't stop accumulating souls. If he keeps doing this one day what? You're going to live a peaceful life like the title of this story says? Yeah, definitely not. Sometime later, we see a bunch of people gathering at the entrance. They've arrived with the so-called Divine Doctor. A guy in a green robe greets him, saying it's an honor to meet him. That's Gamujin, the guy in charge of the people who work in the Golden Gate Mansion, the one belonging to our boy's merchant group. And the Divine Doctor replies that this is just a simple matter of fate. He's eager to meet the patient and asks that he be brought in. The guy, just like us, is thinking, this brat looks way too young to be the Divine Doctor. As they walk through the mansion, the doctor comments that this place is really impressive. Gamujin explains that the owner of the Golden Gate Group poured a ton of money into building all this. It's one of the 3 largest pavilions in the whole region. Nearby, the Black 1, 2, and 3, I still don't know which is which, are working on the plants. The doctor glances over and asks who that woman is. Him? Getting a little smitten, are you, sly guy? Gamujin says she's the second servant of the young master of the mansion. Apparently, she's a woman who came from a well-known courtesan house in the province. She's one of the ones who came here asking to serve the boy. The doctor looks over and asks if the other women went through something similar. He replies yes. Those other girls are also from courtesan houses, and after he visited them, they came over asking to work for him. Man, this doctor is getting peculiar now. He says each of them has an extremely rare body constitution, and he wants them for himself. Gamujin thinks to himself that he never imagined the Divine Master would be a guy so interested in multiple women. A bit awkward, he says he understands what he means, especially since they're all very beautiful. But the doctor cuts him off and says he's referring strictly to their physical constitution. He's not talking about physical appearance, right? Most likely he means their bodies are pure, like smell. Someone in that state could learn anything they wanted. Gamujin apologizes for misunderstanding, and the doctor says it's fine. He just wants to know if he can take them all as disciples. Gamujin starts trembling a bit because, after all, they all belong to the young master. And the doctor says that if the guy agrees, it'll be a favor he'll never forget. With that sly little smile, he's sure that no matter how wonderful those girls are, only an idiot wouldn't take the chance to form a relationship with him. Yeah, fellas. Looks like I called it. This guy is gonna pull a little villain act and end up getting whooped by our boy. The fool is completely confident, thinking the guy will accept. But face to face with our protagonist, he gets rejected immediately. The doctor asks him to think it over, saying it would be a big opportunity for the girls too. Taesan, though, asks why someone who already has 10 disciples wants 4 more. He was clearly a greedy man, more than Taesan could tolerate. The doctor starts to sweat, feeling awkward, and says that the people who came with him aren't necessarily disciples. They're just helpers with the work. But Taesan replies that it didn't look that way, considering how that crowd of old men was glued to him. They were either disciples or subordinates. Besides that, our boy is sure that the man in front of him is much older than he appears. Now it makes sense, right? The bastard is hiding his true age. And after pausing for a moment, he says, an opportunity to learn what I can teach doesn't come easily. But Taesan just wants to know, what exactly would my girls gain from learning one of your techniques? He slams the tea on the table and says the problem here is that the doctor is trying to take something that belongs to him. Besides that, he knows full well the guy isn't actually interested in teaching them medical techniques. He knows what he really wants is the materials they can provide. The doctor, a bit awkward, says it's impossible to use humans as materials. But deep down, he's thinking that the protagonist crossed a line by saying that. The boy in front of him had weak energy and a lousy body. Maybe he should just kill him here and now. If he said the boy died in the middle of treatment, no one would probably care. But then, man, something comes flying toward him and hits right in the middle of his forehead. Boom, his hat is sliced, and Taesan just asks if he really looks like an easy target to him, and warns that what the doctor understands about martial arts is less than the bare minimum to even think about messing with him. Alright then, the doctor is shaking all over, completely stunned. He doesn't even understand what kind of bloodlust this is. It's like someone is screaming inside his head. He's losing his grip. Taesan then says that this is bothering him a bit. These are people who work for him, and it's going to be annoying if people like him keep showing up trying to take them. After all he wants is to live a peaceful life. Sure, man, we believe you. The doctor's standing there like the rest of us, looking dumbfounded, thinking this guy clearly doesn't want anything peaceful in his life. But that fear he just felt. He's felt it once before. Then our boy says that actually he does need someone to handle a few small problems. Oh man, I nailed it twice. First, I said the guy was going to play the little villain role. Second, that he'd end up turning into an ally, and it looks like that's what's happening. Next scene, Gamujin asks if the doctor is really planning to work here now too. And the doctor already says yes, that his life's great dream is now to work for Master Taesan. Of course, Gamujin accepts on the spot, saying it's an unexpected decision, but incredible. He swears on the name of the Golden Wall merchants that he won't be disappointed living here. The doctor thanks him, but obviously, the servants who came with him are all confused, not understanding why he's suddenly acting like this. The doctor's thinking that he lived a free life for a long time, but in the end, he ended up screwed in a place like this. Treating Taesan shouldn't take more than a month or two. The problem is, getting rid of him wouldn't be easy. After feeling that bloodlust, he's just relieved he didn't piss himself on the spot. Kyungwon asked our boy if he's sure this is a good idea. He had placed restrictions on all the doctors, but the main one didn't want to accept. Taesan says not to worry, he had already personally placed a restriction on that guy. That's why he won't be able to do anything. Kyungwon then asks why he didn't just do it to everyone, since he could. And our boy gives the obvious answer. He's still really sick and doesn't have the energy to waste doing that. Plus, it's important to understand that those guys aren't normal doctors. Suddenly, the doctor appears right next to them, and already says that his new job now is to take care of Master Taesan's health at all times. So of course he'll always be staying close to him. Then Soyeon jumps in with an honest question for the doctor. She wants to know if it's really okay for someone so sick to be visiting the courts and house every single day and night. Not only that, but he stays there all night until sunrise. The doctor is stunned. He didn't even expect that. Even he's shocked the boy stays the whole night. The kid's a prodigy. He then asks to check Taesan's pulse, and Taesan agrees, but warns him to be quick. Look at this sneaky doctor man. He says he wants to heal, but what he really wants is to analyze and see the weaknesses, see if there's a way to kill this boy. But the moment he touched him, of course, he felt something off. That was a constitution that made no sense at all. And he asks if the boy is really a living person. The expressions of his two subordinates immediately change. And Taesan asks why he's questioning something like that just from checking his pulse. To which the doctor explains, he's never seen someone with a body constitution as bad as his. The energy flow he had was so poor, it was basically the same as a dead person. Taesan asks what he does with someone who calls him a ghost like that. Strangely enough, Kyungwon suggests exploding the guy's balls, but like, what kind of logic is that? The doctor, however, says not to misunderstand. All he's trying to say is that he needs to be treated immediately. Taesan then asks if the doctor would be willing to bet his own life on what he's saying. The doctor replies, "Of course not. Hell no, I wouldn't bet my life." He smiles and says he has no idea how to treat something like this, but that's his job, which leaves the others confused, right? Where's all that confidence coming from if you don't have the slightest clue what to do? Still, he tells Taesan he's sure that at least his reading of the body isn't wrong. But Taesan just tells him to get lost if he's not going to bet his life and doesn't even know how to treat him. The doctor, though, replies that he can't back out now. His mission is to follow him and figure out what's going on. But inside, he's thinking this whole thing is way too strange. How is this guy even moving with a body like that? Then he asks Taesan how he heard about him and the Divine Doctor title. But Taesan replies that he has no idea who he even is, honestly. The doctor thinks he's joking, asks if he's from some cult or part of the secret merchant family. Suddenly, Taesan stops walking. He turns around and says he doesn't know what cult he's talking about. But apparently, it's not very secret if he has the guts to say it out loud. Then he walks off and tells the doctor that if he keeps talking this much, he's not going to last long. Once again, the poor guy starts trembling, feeling that same bloodlust. While the two others, man, they've already learned that when you're with Taesan, you don't talk too much. You just follow and stay quiet so you don't get wrecked. And the doctor comes to the same conclusion. For now, it's better if he stays quiet. Next day, in the place where the Divine Doctor's group is staying, he's come to a few conclusions after watching Taesan all night. While he was at the Courtson house, the screaming and moaning lasted all night. He realized, yeah, the boy is unstoppable. And more than that, he noticed that the girls from that specific brothel were way purer than women from other places. And all the ones with that kind of purity were the ones who spent a night with Taesan. He's now certain that, at the very least, the boy has some kind of ability that transforms the physical state of people into something pure. And probably he spends 6 hours using that technique. Man, this guy already figured out a lot, huh? Quick work, you sneaky brat. The doctor's current goal is to get closer to our boy and extract more information. Suddenly, Soso appears and calls for Divine Dr. Dubba. Apparently his name is Dove, and says the young master is looking for him. He walks over a bit hesitant, wondering what kind of problem it'll be this time. The hardest part for him in this place is that he still can't figure out how this guy thinks. Back at the usual table, our boy asks if the doctor is as skilled as people say. A bit unsure, the doctor answers that even if it doesn't look like it, he's proud to say he's one of the best in the region. There are probably only 5 people in the whole world who dare say they're better than him. Obviously, Taesan, humble as always, says, that's still way too many people. And Dubby says that no matter how good he gets, he still can't compare to people like the Poison Demon and the immortal of healing. That's when Sueyeon asks if the people he's talking about also include the cultist demon, to which he replies yes, the demonic cult has someone who's more skilled than him, but nobody knows exactly who that person is, and it seems they've become even harder to find now since they tried to go into hiding. Taesan wants to know what exactly the demonic cult is trying so hard to hide. Sueyeon just answers, that's the real problem. Everyone wants to know that. What they do know is that he's using some kind of illusion enchantment that separates him from this world, a power that can only be broken if you have the key. Taesan recognizes that technique as the Mystic Sky Enchantment. It's only activated when the leader of the cult dies, and the key to undoing this power is the birth of a new leader. That's because you can't pass through the barrier unless you are the leader yourself. He remembers having killed all the candidates to become the celestial demon in his past life, so unless a new one appears, they won't be able to leave that place. Back in the meeting, he says he's not there to talk about that. He just wants to know if the doctor can reattach a severed limb. The doctor gives a sly smile and says that would be easy. Obviously, it's never the same as someone who never lost their arm, but he can restore a destroyed limb as if it had been cleanly cut. Taesan wants to know which limbs and organs he can do that with, and the doctor replies most limbs and most organs. He can save anyone as long as they were killed instantly. Taesan says that's excellent news and tells him to keep an eye on the training of the other two. The doctor's a bit confused and says he doesn't know anything about martial arts. He spent his whole life studying medicine. But Taesan tells the two of them that now they can train in the perfect way, since they now have someone who can make sure they don't die instantly. They're allowed to cut off each other's limbs, as long as the head stays on. Of course, the two servants immediately understand what he means, and they're standing there trembling, asking for a clearer explanation. Taesan tells them, the way to become stronger is to fight for your life truly. You'll evolve way faster than anyone else if you fight each other like you actually want to kill. The two of them are already shaking, which means they'll have to slice off each other's limbs while the doctor reconnects them afterward. Our boy tells the doctor that his job is to make sure neither of them dies. Kyungwon says it'll be a problem, because if he gets hurt during practice, it'll be harder to protect our boy. But Taesan says not to worry. He's not leaving this place for a whole month starting today. That's the time they have to get strong enough to be able to protect him. The doctor realizes there's no way out for him now and says, they can fight as much as they want. As long as they don't die instantly, I can heal them. Besides that, he's sure this training method will get results. Their abilities will improve tremendously. The doctor's confident this method will work because it started with the celestial demon from long ago. Boom! 1 month has passed already. And guess what? We're back at the courtesan house. In the middle of training, Kyungwon sees an opening and goes to slash Sueyeon in the neck. She barely dodges but still takes a small cut on the cheek. But now that she realizes he's going all in like this, she decides to go in for the kill too, and he hesitates for a second, and she comes at him with a slash that scrapes under his chin. That's when someone claps and says the training's over for today. It's the doctor, saying it's time to apply the healing cream. The two of them are standing there trembling. Clearly, this was way worse than fighting. That's when Kyungwon says he doesn't need something like this. The injuries from today weren't even that serious. But Dubba replies that that's not true. He's covered in wounds all over his body. Even if it hurts a little, this is the most effective way to get them back to training as fast as possible. At that moment, Taesan opens the door and says that this healing medicine is really good. Everyone is startled to see that our boy has arrived. And Dubba wants to know what he's doing there, because our boy responds that he said 30 days ago he would come back after a month. Dubby asks if he's alright, and right away, Taesan stretches out his fist, causing the poor guy to flinch. But of course, our boy just tells him to check his pulse if he's that curious. The second he analyzes it, Dubby's expression changes. He asks how he managed to restore his body like that. What Taesan did was almost obvious. He used the energy he absorbed from the girls at the courtesan house to fix up his wrecked body a bit. The only issue is that in the process, he realized the soul he has now is different from the one he had before. In the past, his energy was violent and destructive. Now it's actually more compact and durable. The problem is that it's extremely hard to control. On the other hand, once he masters it, he'll be capable of creating the perfect body. Back to the present, he tells the doctor to stop purposely making the cream more painful just to make them suffer. Clearly, he's been torturing the two without any real reason. Right then, Kyungwon realizes that all the pain he's been enduring was because of the damn doctor, and says they're going to have a little chat. All scared and off-kilter, Dubby tries to say that his subordinates went through a rough time to get that information, but Taesan just says he's living way too comfortable a life. The doctor, though, poor guy, is suffering, saying it's hard to train those two, keep applying ointments all the time, heal their wounds, and still do everything else. You need to be two people to handle so much. Taesan asks if he's suggesting that he wants to have his body split in half, to which he replies with a crooked face that the joke's not funny. Every time our guy threatens him, he remembers something scary from his past. Taesan finds that strange and wonders if this guy used to belong to the Sacred Demon Clan, a group that existed all over to gather information. Each of its members disguised themselves in cities as bodyguards, merchants, and doctors. W was probably one of those who lived as a doctor. That makes the boy wonder if he might have known or knows about the old life he used to live. Dub then says it's strange that our guy is so interested in the Zhongli clan. Probably the daughter of the Yan mansion must have been stunning. The king of the brothel is thinking that, yeah, she really is beautiful. In a way, she even reminded him of someone from the past. Oh snap, I thought he was going to say something like, but I don't care about her. But nope, that was it. Dudes in love, huh? Dub is asking if they shouldn't add a few more bodyguards, since the Zhongli clan is pretty dangerous. But the protagonist just replies that he's a scared little kitty. Obviously, he wouldn't need anything like that. That Zhongli clan is going to be a piece of cake to deal with. Back when he was the celestial demon and most clans were losing to his sacred clan, only the Zhongli clan ran away. He tried going after them to not let those bastards get away, but when they found them, they had already burned everything and vanished. Now he's eager to see what those bastards' lives are like today. At the Yan mansion, an old man is standing there face to face with our protagonist, eyes wide, saying that apparently Dr. W really is impressive. His body seems to have improved a lot. That man is the master of the Yan mansion, and Heron's father. Taesan says he's still far from regaining the power he once had, but he'll get there eventually. Nothing suspicious about that line, right? Doesn't give off reincarnated vibes at all. Master Yan laughs and says it's been a long time since they've seen each other, and the boy's changed a lot. It's just a shame things have gotten so complicated this time. Seems like the Zhongli clan is really determined to go through with this. They're refusing to acknowledge his marriage to Heron, and on top of that, there are a lot of people on their side. And obviously, if Taesan doesn't accept the humiliation, they'll probably target the Golden Gate merchant group. The protagonist replies that he'll try to settle it, while angrily saying those damned Zhongli never change. They're trying to use his marriage to, in the end, steal both the merchant group and the Yan mansion. Next scene, there's the protagonist group of Black 1, 2, and 3. When he was about to leave the house, someone put a hand on the door. A 3-meter-tall lunatic asked if he was byeok Taesan, and this one's the newest son of the Wong family, known as Wong. Right away, our boy already knew it was him. Then this Wong says he heard that our guy has bad performance in bed. Excuse me? If there's one trait our guy's known for, in a good way, it's that, man. You're way off. But the dude asks if Taesan wants to learn a lesson. Dang, now I just realized it's not Black 1, 2, and 3. It's Wong's group, man, who are ready to throw down. Wong is standing there with that face of a side character who's about to get beat up, asking if our guy wants a private chat. Taesan asks if it's just going to be the two of them, with no one following. Weirdly, Kyungwon suddenly yells that our guy can't just shut down the dude like that. To which Wong laughs, saying that apparently even his bodyguard is pretty arrogant. He was asking for a lesson using his boys. Taesan thanks him, saying that Kyungwon just finished his training recently and a duel would be perfect. Looks like, man, our guy is going with Wong and leaving Kyungwon to handle those guys there. In other words, one's gonna die over there and one's gonna die over here. Those poor guys, probably weaker than Black 1, 2, and 3, draw their swords saying it can be a fight, but if someone dies, it's no problem. Right nearby is W, finding this development pretty interesting since those guys were the elite of Zhongli. He's eager to see the result of all that training. But on the other hand, he's gonna stay a bit further away, right? Fighting's not his thing. In another part of the mansion, Wong is in front of the lake and asks if the place isn't decent. Taesan just replies that the guy is quite dedicated. You just arrived and already found a place like that. To which Wong replies that it's only natural, since he's been waiting for this moment for a long time. Taesan might not know, but he's extremely skilled when it comes to inflicting pain. Our boy is standing with arms crossed, sighing, saying he's looking forward to seeing that. But before all that, he just wanted to know if the guy really has any desire to marry Heron. Wong replies yes, she's pretty enough to earn more than one look from him. But that doesn't mean she's the right person to be his partner. His ambitions were way too big for someone who comes from that family and is then he says it's not enough and throws a knife. But the thing hits flat against the tree and he's left there looking dumb, wondering where Taesan is. Yeah, man, look where he is, with his hand on his head and right behind you, saying it's time to find out how far those ambitions go. Yeah, sucker, now you found out that the guy who supposedly had a wrecked body isn't that wrecked after all, right? And in a second, he's already screaming and the sound is echoing through the forest, scaring people far away. Right away, King Won is sure Taesan must be shut down the poor guy. Strangely, the dude's servants don't even recognize their master's voice, saying that apparently Taesan is the one suffering. But I know. I'm telling them to stop messing around and just attack already. The poor guys raise their swords and say that since they're so eager, they'll help them go to the next life. But when the first one goes for a slash, Kyungwon dodges and kicks him right in the chin. Two others come in from the side, saying that his arrogance would end right there. But as soon as he looked back, bam, something smacked the sucker in the face. A sword sheath rolled in and Suyeon told him to come play with her too. Sweethearts standing side by side like the perfect duo, both swearing they wouldn't let Taesan down and would show the results of their training. Meanwhile, our guy is stealing all the evil energy. I think, from that sucker Wong, wanting to know where all that arrogance went. But the guy didn't need to worry. Taesan would only extract half his energy, since in this life he doesn't want to kill anyone. He's got amnesia or something. Did he forget he already killed plenty of people? Back at the mansion, obviously the sucker's servant is being shredded up and dropped on the ground like trash. A few seconds later, everyone was kissing the pavement. Suyeon says that for a moment she had her doubts, but they really did it. Kyungwon smiles and says it's thanks to the trust they have in the young master. She, however, finds it strange. It shouldn't be easy for them to defeat warriors from the Zhangli clan. So how did it happen? He says he has no idea, he just knows that if it weren't for Taesan, they'd be the ones on the ground right now. The truth is, before they came to this place, our guy had passed on all the information about how those guys fought. And obviously, it was like he knew every single detail about them. Even though at first he felt unsure, during the fight it became clear that it was extremely easy to predict everything they were going to do. And obviously, that was thanks to the info Taesan gave them. He'd be thinking that the guy is amazing while standing there confused, looking back. Sometime later, W was there singing on the bridge when he looked back and saw Taesan arriving. Our boy wanted to know what he was doing there. He explained, right, that he preferred to stay out of the fight because he wouldn't have been any help. So our boy wanted to know why those guys hadn't dealt with that bunch of trash yet. A bit awkward. W said that that wasn't a bunch of trash. They were the elite warriors of Zhongli. But Taesan Pays replied that from the looks of it, those two still had a lot of training to do. When they got back, they'd be training twice a day. He can't stand people failing around him. W let out a little smirk, right, sneaky? Looks like you're not the one doing the training if all you're doing is thanking them. Sometime later, around the table, Wong was there with the head of the house. Beside him was our dear Rin, who was always blushing. She looked forward and saw Wong's face and lowered her gaze. The father noticed that, glanced to the side, and saw that Wong looked kind of off. He lowered his cup and said he heard the two had a conversation today. Right away, Rin stood up and said she was surprised that Taesan was okay. He, however, asked what she would have done if he wasn't. Before she could answer, he just said yes. They had a very interesting conversation. Something you could say touched their very souls. Wong replied that yes, it's true, it really did shake their souls. Taesan, however, called out to him and said it was rude to talk without looking someone in the eye. The poor guy, all trembling, tried to muster some courage, but standing in front of him was just the captain. One stare from Taesan, and he felt his whole spine get electrocuted and trembled in his seat. The guy merely threw up, stood up, slammed the table, and the food hit the floor. With that, Suyeon helped Heron move away while the others looked confused. Our boy, though, was just smiling, mission accomplished. Sometime later, someone slams the table and asks what the hell is going on. This is the patriarch of the Zhongli clan. The man in front of him tells Master Qian that it seems the bodyguards from that mansion were stronger than expected. They're starting an investigation to see if the Yan mansion helped them in any way. Qian, who's the master, wants to know how Wong is doing in a moment like this. The guy says it looks like he locked himself in a room and refuses to come out at all. He's having some kind of problem with his martial arts, but they can't figure out why. It's almost as if part of his memories were ripped out. Qian puts a hand to his forehead and says the bastard not only got defeated, but also turned into a complete idiot. He's sure it's impossible this is Taesan's doing, since that guy's super weak and was about to die. There must be someone else behind all of this, and things are getting weird. He tells them to find out who's involved in this situation no matter what. The guy just nods and says he'll be taking his leave. While looking out the window, he says they're finally reviving this clan that was nearly wiped out. In a time like this, they can't afford humiliations like that. He swears he'll crush anyone who dares mess with the Zhongli clan, even if it's the celestial demon. Back at the Yang mansion, a group walks through the door. Right away, Kyungwon gets a feeling that trouble's coming. He warns our boy, who just wants to know if they're there for revenge. Kyungwon says he's not sure, but it looked like there were some martial arts masters among them. Taesan wants to know how he's so sure there was a master in the group. The guy explains there was an old man with a sword who clearly wasn't bothering to hide his presence. Our boy laughs and says they really never change. They love to show off and only ever learn after a good beating. He says it's time, and Kyungwon thinks they're heading to face those guys. But Taesan says no, he's got other things to take care of. Confused, his friend asks where they're going, since the matters at the mansion weren't resolved yet. Taesan says not to worry, they've got plenty to deal with thanks to the fool who peed himself. Meanwhile, they should just follow him. He goes ahead saying that finally things were starting to get interesting. By the end of the afternoon, they were arriving at the Blood Axe sect. The demon smiles, saying that they were actually bigger than he expected. Obviously, his friend wants to know what he's planning to do there. This was one of the strongest unorthodox factions in the whole city. They do give money to the Zhongli clan behind the scenes, but no one really knows why. Taesan says he's sure those guys don't like Zhongli, so if they're giving them money, it's definitely not by choice. Kyungwon replies that it's probably because they're not strong enough, and that's something normal in this world. Taesan answers that it's not just that they're weak and not fighting back, they're paying those tributes because they know resisting is useless. And he asks if Kyungwon knows what happens to people like that. Kyungwon glances over, and our guy says that all of them lose the will to live. At that, his friend flinches and remembers the old city burning. His father yelling at a servant to get the boy out of there and go as far away as possible. A young Kyung-won looks back and sees his father, saying he hopes at least he survives from the family. But that's when someone lands a hit on his back and says that apparently one managed to escape. Looking back, he sees the Blood Phoenix demon and asks why they're there. Before the guy can answer, he's already on his knees, saying that his family is innocent and begging him, at the very least, to spare his child. He grabs the demon's feet and pleads. But the Blood Phoenix demon says that one day that son will come looking for him, seeking revenge for his father. So in other words, the two of them were destined to meet again someday. And when that day comes, it'll be hard for him to accept that same plea again. And with that, he kills the father, right? But apparently, he let Kyung-won escape. And now he seems to understand that what taesan said, being weak is the greatest sin. He gets goosebumps and asks, though, what are the weak supposed to do then? Our guy smiles, puts his hand on the door, and says he'll give them strength. Obviously, as soon as the door opens, the guys inside are shouting that intruders are coming. But just moments later, the chief and his whole group are already wrecked. Taesan approaches the leader, Chu Jagwine, who's already screaming and begging for his life, saying they really made some serious mistakes. He's already banging his head on the floor, saying he'll obey anything Taesan says. But Taesan just smiles and asks him to calm down, explaining that he's only there to teach something really interesting and wants to see how useful they'll be. Before the leader can even understand, he's told that in exchange for what he's going to learn, all of them will be killed if they ever pay another tribute to the Zhongli house. The leader's got tears in his eyes, saying that if they don't pay Zhongli, they'll die anyway. So nothing's changed. A few days later, over at the Zhongli mansion, someone's yelling so loud it scares away the birds, wanting to know why the Blood Axe doesn't want to pay tributes anymore. It's a servant informing the king, who slams the table, asking if those idiots think they'll just accept something like that. The guy, though, says something feels off. The people over there seem way too confident. The boss says they're probably just hiring some second-rate martial artists to help out, but they'll handle it. The elder says fine then and asks if they can send the soldier's corpse over to deal with him. The problem for the boss is that lately they've been having some money issues. They can't afford to lose the funds those guys were paying, so he orders them to send a guy named Zhang Sungrak and the group of warriors. The guy says he's heading out to call them now while the leader is fuming. One week, a sucker comes back humiliated with his pants soaked, and the next week, these guys suddenly don't want to pay their tributes. For some unknown reason, things seem to be going wrong for them. Only Sherlock Holmes could figure out who's behind all this. Look at those two walking through the city right now. They definitely couldn't have anything to do with all of this, right? Kyung-won is asking if this is really going to work. For sure, those guys are going to pay the price for not paying the tribute. Not to mention that Zhongli won't be happy that they're walking around exposing their weaknesses. Taesan, though, tells him not to worry. Their finances are completely frozen, and they won't have time to care about the two of them. Even so, this friend insists, saying it's madness. If they get attacked by the warrior groups, they'll probably lose even with the tips. That's when Taesan says that's exactly why they're going to meet some people who can handle those guys. When he looks to the side, our boy is already walking into Dongwoo's bodyguard agency. The poor guy's kind of confused, but it's pretty obvious he's probably going to hire some bodyguards. That's what you can do in a place like this. As soon as he goes up the stairs, a guy asks why he's there, and our boy already says he's there to see the owner. The poor little soldier tries to say not just anyone can meet the owner, but Taesan immediately asks if by any chance he is just anyone. Dang, just like your mom, right? When you say, but mom, everyone's going to the party, and she replies, you're not everyone, you're not going. And then you're just left there looking like a fool. He just walks right in, man, and the guard clearly didn't want to get involved. Smart move. He just stood there watching the two of them enter. Sometime later, in front of a door, the guy says to wait there, and the boss is on his way. But to announce him, he needs to know who's requesting the meeting. Taesan asks him to wait and says he hasn't remembered everything yet. He leans against the wall while everyone watches patiently. The old man is starting to lose patience, but just when he's about to say something, our boy cuts in. He tells him to go to the man and say he has something to deliver called the Mystic Moon. The poor worker's just standing there with no clue what this lunatic is talking about. They're all just standing there when Kyung-won glances over and asks what this Mystic Moon business is about. Then suddenly, the door swings open and an old man shows up. The guy drops to his knees right away, introduces himself as the owner of the shop, and pays his respects. That rascal Taesan just smiles and walks ahead, while the assistant's obviously just standing there like, what the hell is going on? Why did this Mystic Moon thing get that old man so hyped up? Next scene, Taesan is already in the chair wanting to know how many people the guy can mobilize. The old man replies, 6 main warriors and 60 bodyguards. Taesan tells him to gather everyone, but keep the main ones separate. He needs to talk to them first. The old man simply agrees, and there's our boy passing on some information to the suckers. But Kyung-won has no idea what our guy's up to. Even though they're skilled bodyguards, they're far from being able to beat someone trained by the Zhongli clan. Still, there's our guy explaining everything and saying they're going to support the unorthodox faction. The masked guys say okay, and our guy says they'll now go with them. Kyung-won wants to know what they'll be helping, But our guy says no, they'll just go along, but the others are the ones who will fight. Even so, the friend says it'd be better if he helped, just so the guys don't lose. Taesan laughs and asks if he win against the owner of that place. Kyungwon answers that the old man's kind of worn out and probably, even if he were a master, he's at the same level as him. But he's sure he's more skilled than those master bodyguards. Taesan, however, says he's seriously deluded and completely wrong. He's nowhere near strong enough to fight the master bodyguards. And beyond that, the boss of that place is way stronger than he imagined, and he has to learn to respect things he can't see. Poor Kyungwon doesn't understand anything, right, man? But the truth is that Taesan knows this because those guys are members of the sacred demon cult. In other words, yeah, this is the cult he trained those guys in. And it seems like he's been able to track down a few members thanks to Dubby's investigation. And it doesn't even matter if they don't know who he really is. If the Mystic Moon is mentioned, they're forced to submit. Wait, so if I show up saying Mystic Moon 2, will they obey me? How does this even work? In other words, it explains that these guys are working at a security agency because actually they're way too powerful. And this is just a way to hide their strength. Obviously, his friend wants to know, right? When exactly he made all these connections. To which Taesan replies that children can't know everything in this world. But now it was time to go because he could finally train in a real fight. Obviously, once again, the poor guy is confused. Our boy had just said a minute ago that they wouldn't be joining the fight. But Taesan says he would never say something like that. Obviously, they were going to kill the leader of those guys. Back at the Blood Axe sect, the Zhongli elder, Sungrak, is the one who arrived at their place. And Jogwang, the leader of the Blood Axe, is saying they're not going to put up with Zhongli giving orders anymore. Sungrak, though, asks if he's gone insane or actually thinks he can win. The chief starts yelling like a madman, saying he's not insane. Actually, what they've been trying to do is stay sane, and he warns that they'd rather take a beating than crap their pants. Sungrak hears that and already suspects that whoever was behind what happened to Wong is also behind this, since apparently back when the guy stood up at the table, he didn't just pee himself. I thought he had puked, then I realized he had peed. Now we find out he crapped himself. So the guy let everything out. Suddenly, the old man senses a strange energy, turns to the others and tells them to handle the people inside, and to keep one alive since he had a few questions to ask. He starts leaving the place, feeling something was off. He had taken part in countless battles, but he had never felt something like this. Every fiber of his body was screaming that he was in danger at that moment. Oh boy, look over there. Taesan and the other one are in the tree. You really are in danger, man. That's when our boy says he really does have sharp senses. When the old man looks back, our boy had already dropped down and says that, honestly, he does seem strong. Imother Zhongli is kind of a garbage clan, at least their elders maintain some standards. The elder then says he must be Taesan and asks if he's the one behind all this. But our humble boy says there's no point in saying, since his memory won't last much longer anyway. The old man says fine then, he really is bold for a pup. But as soon as he loses 1 or 2 limbs, he'll start talking. But Kyungwon steps forward and says the old man won't even get the chance to fight Taesan. Looking at the boy, Sungrak thinks he doesn't seem all that strong. Besides, there's no way that powerful energy came from the guy behind him. He thinks there must be someone else hiding around, decides to just deal with the two of them quickly. He draws his sword, saying this is going to be quick. Taesan laughs and asks Kyungwon how long he thinks he'll last in the fight. The poor guy is shaking, hand on his sword, saying that this damned elder has a terrifying aura. He didn't expect him to be this strong, but at the very least he's going to give it his all. Our boy says this is a moment of luck. The fastest way to evolve is by fighting someone stronger than you. The old man is tired of the two of them chatting like he's some practice dummy and says he'll end this now. He steps in for a strike, saying this will be over in an instant, but Kyungwon blocks the first attack. The old man pulls back, surprised, and says he's not bad, actually. He comes in again and Kyungwon dodges again, but gets thrown back with his arms shaking. At least now he was more confident since he could see the path of the attacks. He charges again and the two face off. The elder comes down for an overhead slash, telling him to understand that he's nothing more than a mere bodyguard. The guy blocks it again, but the sword got a crack in it. Clearly this wasn't going to last long at that pace just from the force of the impacts. While the old man keeps delivering a barrage of strikes, he asks if Kyungwon really thinks he has any chance. Kyungwon is sure that if he takes even one of those hits in the wrong place, he's going to be sliced in half. Suddenly, Sungrak starts gathering a sphere of energy in his hand. He slams it into his own chest, saying he wants to see if Kyungwon can survive this. The poor guy is sent flying and has to use his sword in the ground to stay upright. And the old man is surprised to see that the bastard didn't fall completely. He's still on his knees. And once again, Kyungwon calms down. As terrifying as the guy is, he can still see the attacks. Taesan praises him, telling him to appreciate the results of all the training he's gone through. Now Sungrak is starting to get scared. He doesn't remember anyone in those bastards' family being able to block one of his attacks like that. He then says he admits that for a bodyguard, Kyungwon has way too much skill. It's a waste for someone like him to be in a guild like that. The best path for him in this life would be to join the Zhongli clan. He throws a glance at taesan and tells Kyungwon that if he comes to the Zhongli group, he'll learn real martial arts. He's way too talented to be cleaning up the messes of that kid. But Kyungwon just laughs and asks what mess he's supposedly cleaning up for the boy. He also tells the old man that the abilities he's seen so far don't even come close to what taesan can do. He grabs his sword again and jumps in, saying he wants to see everything he's got. Sungrak replies that he'll stay an arrogant bastard till the end. The guy comes in with an overhead slash. But this time, the old geezer managed to dodge the sword and drove his own into Kyungwon's shoulder. Yep, poor guy staggered back and this time actually dropped to the ground totally exhausted. His arm looked like it was almost disconnected. And of course, it's the one he uses to hold the sword. Even so, Sungrak is disappointed. He had aimed for the head, not the arm. But in the end, the bastard still managed to read his sword's path. The poor guy's suffering, and the old man says it's time to finish this. But Kyungwon, fired up, says he's not going to let that happen. That's when taesan says, enough. The fool turns and says he wants to keep going. But taesan tells him to look at his arm. He wasn't even going to be able to hold a sword properly anymore, so he should give up. But he gives him a little smile and says he wasn't so bad. He slowly walks closer and tells him to watch carefully and not miss a single detail. Oh boy, this one thinks he's that guy from the arena fight. Huh, cocky. The old man says he heard taesan was on the verge of death, so it's crazy for him to want a sword fight now. taesan, however, says he doesn't need a sword to beat someone like him. Obviously, the old man isn't happy with that and says the first thing he's going to cut is his tongue. taesan tells him to just come already, and the old man's a bit confused. Looking at the boy, he can't see anything special about him. So why is he so confident and cocky? He starts thinking maybe he's hiding something, it might be a bluff. Surely he's just worrying for nothing. He goes in for the strike, convinced there's no way this guy can stop the blow. He pulls off a crazy inverted attack, tosses the sword up to come back down, and he's sure this is a kill shot. Clearly, the kid was an idiot for thinking he could win without even using a sword. But our boy just takes a tiny step to the side, smiling. The old man's trying to figure out when he got that close, and taesan says he told him he doesn't need a sword. He lands a clean strike on the old man, who obviously hits the ground immediately. His vision starts going blurry as he wonders who the hell this bastard is. Poor Kyungwon is just standing there, speechless. He struggled like hell against that old man, and he still couldn't understand how taesan won so easily. If he wanted revenge, he at least need to move the way he does. Back at the Yan clan mansion, W is looking at him saying he's in really bad shape. Kyungwon's just there, right, with not much to say in response. And the doctor warns that if it hadn't been him, any other doctor would cut the arm off, since restoring something like that would have been impossible. Kyungwon doesn't say anything and W starts bragging, saying he better always remember how great it is to have an amazing doctor like him around. Kyungwon tilts his head, thanking him, while the doctor says he likes humans because they're animals that know how to recognize kindness. Suayam thanks him, saying they already thanked him 19 times, so maybe that's enough. But the doctor says that's just to make sure they don't forget how kind he is in the future. The two of them thank him again. W then glances to the side and sees taesan arriving. He says he showed up at the perfect time and asks if he heard about the big offer he got. He was about to say something about being offered some herbs, when suddenly taesan gives him a look, and he immediately turns away, asking why he looks so scary today. Our boy tells him to leave if he wants. W is a little confused, wondering where he's supposed to go. Our boy says if he wants to go with the Zhongli clan and just go already. W starts to say something about how our boy is the only one he wants to serve, but taesan just tells him to shut it, and warns him, either go join the Zhongli clan or go deal with the mountain bandits. Kyungwon then explains that at least now the Zhongli guys will be occupied for a while. But Art Moy says, unfortunately, that's not how it's going to be. Now that they're completely cornered, their only chance is to come at them with everything they've got. But that wasn't the most important part. These guys shouldn't even have the guts to act this boldly, which means someone is behind all this. And first, they need to figure out who's pulling Zhongli's strings. He asks if W found what he asked for, and W says yes. It took him 3 days and all his subordinates to find it. taesan smiles and says to hand it over already. He wants to know who's controlling Zhongli in this era. Scene cuts to the Zhongli clan. A woman walks through the corridor and heels, and everyone bows to her. One of them announces that someone from the White Flower Courtesan house is there. The Zhongli patriarch says to let her in immediately, and as soon as he sees her, he's already trembling. Oh boy, she's way too beautiful for the artist to be hiding her for 16 panels. She's there stroking their furniture, saying she heard that one of the elders died last night. She wants to know if he was really killed by a merchant's son. Sheenan, however, explains that there were extremely skilled people with that guy, but they don't mean to worry, soon he'll take care of it all. The woman, though, says no deal. The women of the White Flower Courtesan house are going to handle taesan themselves. Whoa, if there's one group our boy has experience dealing with, it's the Courtesans, right? I don't know if her plan's gonna work. The boss is a bit nervous, but she tells him not to worry. Very soon he'll end up paying her a visit, since they're spreading a rumor to lure him in. He wants to know what rumor that is, and she says it's that they're allied with the Golden Celestial Alliance. Man, the artist really was hiding this little model from us, huh? Too bad we already know. Either she's gonna die to our boy, or, well, I think she will. Is he going to kill a woman? Now I'm curious. Is he that kind of guy? The next day, our boy is telling them not to follow if they're going to keep acting like this. W asks if they should leave Kyungwon behind, but Kyungwon says no way. He's full of energy. W says that at this rate, they're going to get caught before even accomplishing anything, so it'd be better to use poison. They ask, what kind of poison? He says it's something that basically changes your facial expression since it relaxes your face completely. The poor guy, though, in the middle of the explanation, is once again the poor guy when it comes to taesan, who just tells them to hurry up. Still, W insists that at the very least, they should use the poison on Kyungwon, since he was drawing too much attention. Taesan starts wondering if he's really surrounding himself with decent people. And with that, Kyungwon is just left standing there with a dumb look on his face. Sometime later, they arrive at the White Flower Courtson House people. Our boy has arrived in his natural habitat, and Suyeon is devastated that he's going back to his old habits. Dove, however, tells her to take a closer look. That wasn't just any place, it was a Courtson house backed by the Golden Celestial Alliance. She finds it strange that guys like them are getting involved in a place like this. Dove explains that these people are constantly expanding their locations to gather as much information as possible. You could easily tell just by looking at the soldiers outside. They looked like regular people, but they were extremely skilled. Taesan suddenly points out that the rumors about this place only started recently, which suggests they're trying to attract a specific person. W agrees and says it makes total sense. Suyeon, on the other hand, says that if they're trying to lure someone, maybe they shouldn't be going there, because, you know, it could be a trap. The doctor asks if she's feeling sorry for Taesan, and she replies, hell no. And so the Fantastic Four entered the building. The first one appears, welcoming them, saying the girls there were wondering when the Night King of Wuhan would finally visit them. Double laughs and says that apparently the rumor has been spreading a lot. He pushes the girl aside and tells her to bring the best they got. Meanwhile, Taesan is just observing that the guards here aren't bad at all. They could go toe-to-toe with warriors from respected clans. If this alliance has warriors like this around, that clearly means there's an even bigger group behind all of this. What he wants to figure out is what they're actually planning. At that moment, the woman from the house appears, saying his room and companion were already prepared. Double thought he was gonna get out of it, man. But Suyeon said he was staying there with them. He tried to say no, but she just ordered a guard to take the guy in. And there he was, sitting on the bench, thinking, really? I'm gonna have to stay in a place like this. Kyungwon, on the other hand, already knew what was coming. Then Suyeon asked what happened. He didn't look too good. All twisted up, he replies that he's fine, she doesn't need to worry. But he's saying that the poison he took is wearing off, and it looks like it's causing some side effects. Strangely, from his perspective, he sees Suyeon asking if he wants to meet a fourth too. He shouts back, telling her not to worry, he's fine. She seems confused by the reaction, but once again, from his POV, she says she's going to take a closer look. And the guy's already smacking his head into the wall. Seeing Dubba's little smirk, he's sure that bastard knew about the side effect. With his forehead bleeding, he says not to worry. It's all resolved. Suddenly, everyone almost draws their swords when someone says that Master Taesan doesn't seem to be around. It's the Zhongli administrator known as Momwang. And yep, along with him, obviously, comes a squad. Dubby asks if the Zhongli warriors are allied with the people from this place. Momwang responds that it's a shame, but since he noticed that no one there could be allowed to leave alive, he gives the order to go after them. But the one who charges in first is Kyungwon, saying it's been hard to stay focused, so a fight would be good for distraction. The first two already take a hit and drop to the ground. Suyeon asks who he's been trying so hard to hold back. The poor guy, a bit embarrassed, says he'll explain later. Then two come at her, but easily she also takes them down with one hit to the neck each. While the fight is going on, our boy is sitting there, turned to the next victim. The poor girl tells him to come closer, that it's going to be fun. But he replies that it sounded kind of noisy outside. She asks what he means by that. He says it was the sound of a fight going on. She pretended to be clueless and said maybe his hearing was off because she wasn't hearing anything. But the damn woman was thinking to herself that of course there was a fight going on. This was the beginning of his end today. She was feeling a bit sad, thinking it was a shame he was going to die like that without even realizing what was going on, since at least he was kinda cute. Then suddenly, Taesan asks if she wants to have both her eyes ripped out. Did he look like some prey that got caught? The fool was all confused, wondering what he was talking about. But he answers that she must be thinking he showed up there without knowing anything. In the blink of an eye, he punches the wall and tells her to never look at him like that again. Meanwhile, Suyeon and Kyungwon are outside having a good time. Another one comes at him from behind, but he dodges. At the same time, Suyeon shows up behind him to help, pushes him back into the fight and slices through one more enemy. Then she comes from the side and cuts the shoulder of another guy. And a few moments later, everyone's lying on the floor. The two of them are exhausted, and that's when Momwang says they really are just a bunch of useless idiots. Man pulls out a little fruit-peeling knife and says he'll have to handle this himself. Obviously, they're confused. Who pulls out a paring knife in a fight like this? But suddenly, the luminec launches himself at them. They raise their swords, realizing he was way too fast. But the old man just ducked low and slipped past clean. I thought he was going to stab both of them right there. But actually, he threw out a flurry of attacks. The two managed to defend, but not perfectly. They were getting cut here and there across the face. The suckers had to retreat, and Kyungwon wondered if fighting a master was just too much for the two of them. Momwang says they're skilled, but they're dreaming if they think they can beat an elder. Even if they're talented, it would be disgraceful for the clan if he lost here. But right at that moment, boom, the wall behind them explodes. The gang already knows what's coming, right? Bodies drop to the ground, and Taesan appears. Momwang recognizes him instantly and says he can't believe it. Last he heard, Taesan was the name of a guy with a wrecked body. Looks like he'd been hiding his strength for a long time. The protagonist says he'd never do something like that. People just see what they're capable of seeing. The old man says, all right then. He was going to spare the kid's life, but now he's changed his mind. Our boy grins. Momwang pulls out knives and gets ready. He throws 3 at Taesan, who easily dodges them. The guy behind the door almost got hit though. Taesan says the old man's shaking way too much for someone talking about sparing lives. He starts walking toward him, saying he knows the guy won't have the answers he wants anyway. So hey, he grabs the guy's little hat and says they'll just move on to the fun part. The old guy didn't even realize he'd gotten so close. And there goes Taesan, absorbing all the man's energy. A little while later, Nubba shows up smiling, and Kyungwon celebrates that at least he didn't get attacked. He says not to worry. When it comes to hiding well during fights, you can count on him. Then Taesan finishes up and lets go of the old man, and everyone leaves the courts and house. Apparently, it's the first time Taesan left one of these places before sunrise. Oh wait, scratch that. They're already beating up other guys and heading to a different area of the region. The lady is confused, wanting to know who exactly they're looking for. Dub explains that it's obviously the people behind all of these incidents. Whoa, look who's in the middle of the next room, the next target. Taesan enters. She glances it over and he immediately asks if she is the one. She better not even think about claiming the course and house had nothing to do with it. The woman replies she'd never lie like that. She values her life. The protagonist then asks why she's so calm if she really values her life that much. The woman says she's confident and that she's more useful alive than dead. He replies that he wants to know a few things. And then she says she'll tell him everything. Obviously, our boy tells her to say who's behind all of this. He doesn't want names from the Celestial Alliance. He wants the identity of whoever's behind them. They stare at each other for a second, and she lowers her head, saying she doesn't know the identities of the 3 people behind it. They move in extremely deceitful ways and are always hidden. The only thing she can say is the name of the person who receives orders from them, someone called Bong Mook. Dubby seems startled by the name, and Taesan asks if the guy is famous. He explains that yes, he was one of the strongest sword masters, known as the Flame General, but as far as he knows, the guy died a long time ago. He tells the woman that apparently the guy is dead, but she insists, saying she's sure it was Bong Mook. He asks if she has the guts to swear on her own soul. She says yes. Then she says fine. From now on, she'll take over that place. She's used every means possible to gather information about the Alliance, this Mook guy, and report it to him. She lowers her head and says that unfortunately, it'll be hard to get any more information. But he tells her to stop pretending. He knows very well she was hired by the Golden Alliance since she belongs to the Hao faction. Looks like it's true, right? Because now she's got that scared look on her face. And he leaves, saying that for someone from the Hao faction, she's terrible at lying. Dove is surprised they're leaving already, but our boy says he trusts she'll do a great job. However, he stops midway and says he knows the location of the Shadow Step manual. That seriously sounds like some lost Naruto jutsu. And the woman's shocked, because that's a technique from the Hao clan, one that was lost decades ago. Only our Brabin Ho, the little reincarnated one, would know something like that. Of course she doesn't figure that out, but she says she'll follow his orders. Sometime later, on a mountain. Yeah, looks like it really was the first time Taesan went to a courtson house and made it back before sunrise. A man is walking across a bridge. Oh, probably that Bong Mook guy, right? He runs into some pump with yellow or red hair. Looks like a villain, who asks what the problem is. He explains that the situation in Wuhan isn't looking good. The Zhongli group and the White Flower courtesan house were both defeated by an unknown person. The guy wants to know how it's possible they don't have intel on something that big. Then this kid lying on a bench says that the brother can't even control something that simple. And the buff, dark-skinned guy says they need to take this seriously. Wuhan was a crucial part of their plan. The standing brother agrees, saying they waited hundreds of years and can't allow a failure like this. Very soon, they, the unknown ones, will appear in the world.